Well, hey there, and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. I just had the most fascinating conversation with an author and a therapist named Cathy Adams, and she has a book called Zen Parenting, Caring for Ourselves and Our Children in an Unpredictable World. And if you have children, and if you plan on having children, and if you know any children, this episode is for you because we hit all the topics. And I love so much her theories and what she teaches about parenting from this very holistic, loving place, but really about preparing kids in a real way to sort of go out in the world and be on their own. And really acknowledging how fear-driven parenting has become. We talked about the pandemic, but she really gave us some good ideas and tips as to how you can relate to children, even teenagers who might be going through, the separating and individuating process, how to relate to them in a way that requires less of you, not more. It requires you to be more of yourself. So the book, again, is called Zen Parenting, Caring for Ourselves and Our Children in an Unpredictable World. Her website is zenparentingradio.com, which is where you can get everything. I have all the information in the show notes, but I really hope that you enjoy this interview with Cathy Adams as much as I enjoyed diving in with her. Well, I'm super excited to welcome you, Kath, to the show. Welcome.
Hi, Terri. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so excited. I'm so into your work and what you're doing. We have a mutual friend in Alexandra Solomon. So at the top, I already told all the listeners and the viewers all about you and all the things you've done. But I'm curious, Zen parenting, why? How did that become a passion for you?
It's funny. I was thinking about when we chose Zen, when my husband and I chose Zen, because Zen Parenting started out as a podcast that we're still doing. We've been doing it for 11 years.
Wow,
So
OG.
I know, big time OG. And just the title alone lets you know how OG, because it's called Zen Parenting Radio. But we chose the word Zen there's my background, we have similar background. I'm a clinical social worker. And so I've obviously been trained in the Western model. I'm a therapist, a child and family therapist. I work with women mostly. And so I always had that Western model, but I have this other aspect of myself. I'm a yoga teacher. I've always been a spiritual searcher. I've been very focused on body awareness. So it's like I've always been kind of bringing these two worlds together the best I can. And there's something about the word Zen that encapsulated all these pieces. Again, it's one of those words that has no definition. So there is no absolute definition of Zen on purpose, because Zen by definition means, it's like the Tao. Once you speak it, it loses its meaning. But the gist of it is you've got the symbol of Zen, it's the yin yang symbol. And so especially with Todd and I speaking masculine, feminine, he's more extroverted, I'm more introverted. So we've got those two sides. I'm more emotional and spiritual. He's more practical and logistical. So we've got those two sides. And then just the whole idea of harmony and how we live with all these differences and all this paradox. So one thing I know for sure is I'm a forever student of Zen. Zen is not something that I'm an expert of. It's a word that I have a deep respect for, and that I'm in a constant relationship with it. Because then when I wrote the book, that came out this year, but it took me about 4 years to write. Once I wrote the book, it was a whole nother process of understanding Zen and the paradox of our experiences and how, accepting light and dark in every situation. So that word is an ongoing growth experience for me. I'll just say that.
I love it. So with the book, what is your goal of the book for parents?
Well, there's a practical goal, which was bringing together everything we've been talking about on our show for the last decade, which is a daunting task, but it's trying to bring in all of this awareness when it comes to empathy, when it comes to self-compassion, when it comes to connection, mindfulness, all these pieces of what it means to show up for yourself, but also as a parent. The greatest compliment I get about the book is that it's a compassionate approach to talking about parenting. I have no like ulterior motive of do this. I have no 1, 2, 3, and then this will happen. It's a constant self-awareness process, and it's really not about your kid. It's about you. I mean, I just had a discussion with my 14-year-old upstairs, and at the end of it, it was all my stuff. You know, it was me being concerned. It was me it's like I was bringing in my history, and that is how we were able to reach an understanding, as I was able to see you're actually doing okay, but I'm concerned because of something that happened to me a long time ago. And so that self-awareness brings a deeper connection to parenting.
It's so amazing. I love the way that you're able to make this concise, even though it's messy, right?
It's very messy.
But there is a precision about the way that you write it in the book and the way that you teach it, of potentially you can listen more and talk less with kids. If somebody walked away and actually was like, this was my biggest takeaway, it would, without a doubt, transform their relationship with their child. And I think that there's something, it's simple, but it's not easy, right?
Yeah.
There's a simplicity to it, but it's not easy. So for parents who are struggling, right? Because, you know, we've all been through the pandemic, and this really upended for a lot of my clients family structures and the homeostasis and family systems and the equilibrium that years of functioning a particular way put in place. How did this play, the pandemic itself, people being locked down, how did that impact the message that you were creating in the book itself?
It was happening all at once because I was already writing the book, and the summer of 2020, I was in the heart of editing. And I think what was interesting was how I was writing about uncertainty and unpredictability of parenting. And we were having the most obvious, most in-our-face, uncertain time that I think any of us have ever had. I'm 50 years old. I mean, there's been a lot of things that have happened to me personally, and I know we can all relate to, you know, experiences in the world, but it shut us down. I mean, it changed every aspect of living. And so that uncertainty, unpredictability, I didn't have to convince people of it anymore. You know, whereas historically I'd have to say, but, you know, your kid may choose to go into soccer instead of, you know, track. You know, it was these really basic ideas of be open to the unpredictability of your child's life and your experience with it. But this became grander. And it's interesting. I added a whole different introduction to the book that summer. You know, I focus in the book, kind of go through all the chakras, and I focus on all these aspects of parenting. But I wrote a brand new introduction that was about talking about inequality, talking about race, talking about sex education, talking about gender norms and stereotypes, talking about, you know, dignity of human beings. I kind of brought all those social work aspects into it because I realized that when things like, you've already used the word messy, when they get really messy and uncertain, we can lose our grounding elements. We can lose our way and forget what's most important. And it also blended well into, you know, self-awareness, that how do you feel about these things personally, so you can understand how you want to talk to your kids about them. That's the really basic level. But then there's also a sense of getting back to humanity. Let's reconnect to each other. Let's see each other as individuals. Let's, you know, make sure that we are focusing on the dignity of ourselves and others. So just in that, you know, the answer I gave you, everything changed. And but I think the one word that kind of rang in my head as you asked was, you know, uncertainty.
You know, it's interesting what I saw within my practice and my groups at that time was how first people were sort of decompensating, breaking down like all of the things they'd put in place to avoid feeling what they didn't want to feel. So first those behaviors, those numbing behaviors accelerated, where lots of people were like, I thought this thing was going to be done in 2 weeks, and now it's, you know, friggin' almost 2 years later. And then for many of my clients, it's the same way that trauma can create this opening for growth.
Post-traumatic growth? Yeah.
Yes. And I saw people actually embracing this as a moment to power pivot if they so choose. So many people, of course, if they were going to retire, they did it early. For a lot of my clients who had disordered boundaries or were in relationships where they weren't talking, they weren't being transparent, this being locked down together for, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, created a powder keg where you just had to do something, either numb yourself into oblivion, which some people did, but a lot of people just faced what they were so afraid to face because our defense mechanisms, right? All the daily ones that what we do to not feel, those things were all just like crumbled in a very short period of time. And we were mandated to be in one place. That doesn't mean we were mandated to be present, but it was an opportunity for many people. Did you see this, any kind of a shift like this within your own practice and working with families and people?
Absolutely. We couldn't run away, right? We couldn't stay overproductive and too busy and travel for our work and just kind of maintain. We were like forced to, I just agree with you so much. And you know who I saw it? I mean, I saw it with everybody. And like I said, I tend to work with mostly moms, but I saw it with teens. And that I have a whole deep history of working with parents around the pressures that are put on kids when it comes to education and staying busy and being engaged. It's like way long ago, we were very focused on Race to Nowhere and what are we really trying to get our kids ready for? Because, it's like, keep going, hurry up, and it never ends. And we all either eventually have a breakdown and then refigure it out. So why are we teaching our kids all these things they're going to need to unlearn? So what I saw in teenagers was because they were under that pressure situation of go to school 8 hours, go to your sport or go to your club or and then come home and get some sleep and be on social media. Like they were so busy that when their lives shut down, I think, we talk about a lot now about teenagers and their mental wellness. And I think it's always been an issue, but I think the reason it's heightened right now, even with them getting back to a bit of a more normal life, is they recognized it. They're like, when I get quiet, when I have nowhere to go, I feel uncomfortable in my skin. I'm not sure I'm doing what I want to be doing. I'm not sure I'm speaking. I was just saying to you before we started recording that I just got your book for my 19-year-old because she's just starting to recognize her own boundaries. And I don't want her to have to figure that out 10 years from now. Let's talk about this now and, how it looks as you go into adulthood. So while I definitely saw it with parents, I think teens took the most interesting brunt of this, or, kids. Their experience with nothing woke them up to themselves. And there's a process of rediscovery that I think they're still going through. So we can call it's definitely a mental wellness challenge. They need the mental health help. Yep. But my optimism tells me that maybe it could, in a few years from now, act as a supportive mechanism in the future, that they now see themselves more clearly. I don't want to be toxically positive about it, like, oh, it was good, right, because it's still painful, but it could potentially lead them in the direction they're supposed to be going.
Yeah, I mean, it can be the reset that most of us would never have done. It was just the universal pause that would have seemed impossible had it not been from external forces. You just couldn't even imagine it because of the way that we'd been living. And I think that it'll be very interesting to see where this generation is and how, like from a social science way, we can look at how did that impact this generation of kids. Yes. And I'm sure there'll be positive and negatives, but it'll be interesting if we can actually see something really tangible about how they choose to live their lives potentially differently. Then you're exactly right. Like, why are we teaching them the things they're going to have to unlearn? It doesn't make sense. So let's talk about the why bringing the mind and body back together when someone is parenting and they're feeling very anxious, how that can lessen parental anxiety. You talk about this in the book.
Mm-hmm. I think we know more than we feel like we do because we go through this process of, education and the career world, and it tells us there's right answers and there's rules to follow. And so we basically from children on start to go from being head and body or body focused all the way up in the head. And then we walk around like floating heads where we think all the answers are, just something that we're supposed to obtain either from a book or some kind of research. And then when we become parents, there is this, we still go to the books and we're like, okay, when are we supposed to have the nap time? When are we supposed to, feed them, which is helpful, but it becomes a much more body-based experience with parenting because you have to tap into or back into your intuitive sense, your connection, your lack of connection, mindfulness overall. Obviously, it's important in every aspect of life. When I'm using the word, all I'm meaning is noticing now, staying here. I'm just being very practical with the word. I'm not talking about the meditation, even though that can obviously help with it. But It's really, how many times do we hear parents say something like, oh, my kid is 2 and they hit another kid. They're going to be a bully. It's like, now, wait a second. Your kid hit a kid because they're learning, they got their toy back. Now, yes, you need to talk with them about that's not how we get our things. We use words, but it doesn't mean anything about 10 years from now. And that's where the suffering comes from, which is I feel out of control. I don't know what this is going to look like. And parenting, to decrease that suffering of the unpredictability and to stay connected to your kid in real time, because that's where they are. They're right here. They're not worried about 8th grade when they're in 2nd grade. They're just in 2nd grade. And so to stay with them, and, I've used the word connection over and over, but it keeps you with them in present time. Not only do they feel more related and in deep relationship with you, but a lot of parents who say, it just flew by, I missed it, because now my kid's 18 and they're leaving. A lot of that comes from you were always thinking about the future or worried about the past, and you weren't with them. You were with them, but not mind body with them. So, I think that this whole process of parenting, it can be painful in that it drives us out of our head, or it in the best case situation where we do have to feel what's going on in our body. And not only does it wake us up to our parenting experience, but it may wake us up to our partnership. It may wake us up to the work we're doing. It's again, talk about unlearning and relearning. Parenting is a big mirror. You're going to see it all because everything is kind of exposed and brought to light if you allow it to be.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it's interesting. Parenting, my own experience is that if there was anything unresolved at any developmental phase of my own life, and I married a widower. I inherited 3 acting out teenage kids. And my teen years were whatever they were, like chaotic. And it's any incident with them, I would find this amplified response if there was something in my background that I really needed to revisit and to integrate and to honor and to talk about in therapy and to journal about or whatever. But I would notice like, wow, I'm having this amplified fear response. And you can feel it because it's not the same as just having a regular response. Like there's something that makes it a very specific. And when you start to really know yourself and you've had some therapy, you're able to go, okay, so what's me, as you were just saying, talking to your 14-year-old, and what am I projecting? What is being amplified? Am I having a transference right now to this child? I have a question. This is always so fascinating to me about when teenagers supposedly separate and individuate, right? They go through this process. And my own experience is that, or my thought about it, is that a lot of times, at least I raised boys, so I can't necessarily say about girls, but they would do it in anger. And in my mind, I thought they do it in anger because it's painful and scary to do it. And if they don't do it in anger, they're not going to do it. So would you talk a little bit about your thoughts about that phase of development with teens and how to best sort of navigate it? Because it can be so activating.
I know. Well, and it makes me think of 2 things. Number one, with the boys, because you're right, I'm raising girls, but my husband runs a men's group and works with boys. I work with women, he works with men. They are given permission to be angry. That's the emotion that they are given permission to feel, right? They really aren't given permission in society to feel sad. They're not even given permission to feel that joyful. They got to like tamp it down, So anger is going to be their way of doing a lot of things, separating, making decisions. Not for all boys. Again, I don't want to be too general because I know there's a lot of boys who have some emotional agility. But I also think that there is this place. We have kind of this dialogue in our society that our teenagers are going to act out. They're going to be mean. They're going to do that for the greater good. You're going to disconnect with them. And then when they're 20, they'll come back to you and they'll be, human people again. It's kind of like our modus operandi of how we deal with it. While there is some truth that lives in there, meaning, like you said, the separation, individuation is very important, and they need to see that they can live a life without you dictating it for them. So there's some truth in it. But there's also a way to, instead of them having to push you away, that you can start to recognize your place in their life as they get older, so you can stay connected to them, but with a much longer rope. So instead of them having to hate you or be chronically angry at you to get you to back up, you can back up and give them some freedom so they can then still come to you, not fear you, not be angry at you, not think that, you're disappointed in them or whatever, and that you're a guidance system. It's just a shifting of parental norms. I kind of, you were just talking about those ages where things get amplified and it's yours. I know mine is 10 and I know mine is 14. I know mine was 5th grade. I know mine was 8th grade. And notice that I just had that, very codependent talk with my 14-year-old. Like, she's my 3rd daughter. Like, I've watched this happen, like I know what happens inside me, my own fears. But one thing that I have like put a lot of energy and thought and also like some deep work of my own into is maintaining a relationship with my girls. They're not supposed to be with me as much all the time. They don't need to tell me everything. I also created a bigger space for them when they turned 13. I had a party for them where I brought a bunch of my women friends and a bunch of family members who are women, and had everybody like read them a letter. And it was kind of like a welcome to young womanhood. They were only 13. They weren't women yet, but and I said to them, and they knew this already, but it was a more formal way of saying, all these women are here for you. So you can come to me, you can go to them, just know that you have people. So I kind of expanded the parental piece. And I got to be honest, Terri, it was helpful to me too. I don't necessarily want to know every detail of my children's lives. Yep. I think they need, this is what we talk about when we talk about villages. They need lots of people. I am the backbone and I'm the one who says, I have your back. But I've always wanted to, since they were even going to school, I backed up a little bit. And then their first experience in peer groups, I backed up a little bit. If we can do that work, I don't think they have to get as angry at us to make it happen, maybe in a more unnatural way.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I love the idea of having a party and introducing. And it's interesting. I have the same girlfriends I've had since 2nd grade. So there's 7 of us, and I have 3 older sisters. And I'm such a group gal with women in particular, that sort of being the auntie, being a mom too, but being the auntie that, every single one of my 6 girlfriends, my yayas as I call them, those kids, every one of them has called me. And with the full understanding that it's a vault, unless it's something dangerous, right? If there's something that I must tell their parents, then I will, right? But I will be honest with them. And they know, like, hey, if you're telling me that you're doing drugs, I will not myself try to get you into rehab. We will talk to your folks. But most of it isn't even those things. It's relationships, it's other things, but the safety intentionally, as you're saying, for your girls, creating a village of support, acceptance, compassion, love. It is alleviating for the parent because all of my friends have different skills. So those kids had this option of going to all these aunties for different things and not feeling the same thing within them. Sometimes it's hard to go to the parent because they're so afraid to disappoint, or even if you've done an amazing job, right? It's not always about the job that the parent is doing. The kid wants your approval no matter what. and you don't want them to be with the bad girlfriend or bad boyfriend, no matter what. Like, that's just how it is. So I love that so much as an idea that people watching this or listening in your own life, think about the real support that you actually have. And I want to ask you, so the book came out in February, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And so what has your feedback been from people with the book? Because I know it's doing very well, and I feel like it's such a practical and accessible guide for parents who are seeking to be, more emotionally aligned and healthy with their kids. This is from the school of thought that we do not own our children, right? Very much like the prophet. It's like we are the bows, they are the arrows.
That's right.
We want them to go out and have their life. So tell me a little bit, what has the feedback been from folks?
Oh, it's been fun. That's kind of the enjoyment of writing, right? Where somebody says, oh, thank you for capturing these words so I can understand this. I mean, people who have been listening to the show for 10 years are obviously very thrilled to have something that they can have for themselves, underline, give to someone else. Because a lot of times there's this generational aspect of parenting where, you are trying to, help your brothers and sisters understand the way you're parenting, or help your parents who are the grandparents understand. So to have something they can give that's not listened to 650 podcasts that this person has done, it's a little easier to digest.
Yeah.
And I also think the feedback is there's as I already said, a sense of thank you for the compassion where people don't feel judged when they're reading it. And I think they also feel, I'm trying to think about the most recent conversation I had with someone where they said, I felt a little off the hook in that I'm supposed to be taking over my child's life. I think a lot of times as parents, we think if our children are making choices maybe we wouldn't make, or we see them struggling or just doing something we didn't understand, more introverted where we were more extroverted. We thought that was something for us to mold and fix and we had to get involved. And there's this heavy feeling of anxiety of like, what do I do next? How do I make this happen? And so much of the book is about you just get to do you, right, and role model how to have authentic conversations, how to show up for yourself. What are you doing that feels good? Because if your kids see and experience from you how to interact in these ways and how to choose your passions. And I mean, it's even simple things like, since my kids were little, I play them the music I love too. I dance in the kitchen. I sing in the car. I, have friendships that they interact with as well. I am myself with my children. I am not one person at work, one person with my husband, and a different person with my kids. I'm, except for some details, I'm pretty much the exact same person. So they know me. And why that's important in that role modeling is I just want to know them. Right. Like, what do you love? What are you interested in? Oh, you don't want to do that anymore? Okay. What's next? You're a kid. I'm not trying to train you to become a certain person or to become the person I didn't become. I like my life. Right. I have my own challenges and I share those too, but I'm doing my dreams. So I hope you do too, whatever that looks like. Right. And so can I just get to know you rather than believe I'm creating you? That's a very different experience.
Wow. Let's just stay there for 1 second. Can I get to know you rather than think I'm creating you like you're a little ball of clay?
Exactly.
Wow, that's so powerful, Kath. All right, I want to ask you a question. You guys, because I talked about it at the top, but the book is called Zen Parenting, Caring for Ourselves and Our Children in an Unpredictable World. Oh, how apt. You can get it anywhere fine books are sold. People can find you where? Tell us.
ZenParentingRadio.com is the best place. That's where the podcast is. I have a newsletter there. We have our events there. The book is there. So ZenParentingRadio.com is everything.
Got it. All right. I'm going to ask you one last question. I remembered. Personally, what has been your most challenging boundary struggle and how did you overcome it if you have?
I think I'm still in it. If I'm going to be completely honest, there's a lot of things that I have overcome. I can say no. I've practiced disappointing people. I have in my relationship with my husband, we've been married 20 years. I'm very vocal about my needs. He knows me very well and I'm a good listener for him. But it is the parenting journey. All these things I'm saying on this show with you and that I'm writing about, I am practicing in real time. You know, we teach what we need to learn, right? So
Yes.
my boundaries, I just shared right before I came down here, I was intervening in something. Now, the beautiful part is my children know me well enough and they've grown up in this home so they can say to me, Mom, I'm not sure this is mine. You know, I'm not sure. I'm kind of hearing what you're saying, and I think you're reading into something that has nothing to do with me. And we actually can have a laugh about it. This doesn't become but I have been a parent. My oldest daughter's 19, and I'm still working on this, Terri. Like, and part of that, you know, I want to just put the word love and be like, it's because I love them, but it's also because I'm afraid. Mm-hmm. It's also because of my own anxiety. Yep. It's also because of how I'm perceived. You know, this like, are you doing the things you're supposed? Are you missing anything? Mm-hmm. There's a societal pressure. Yep. But, you know, I'd like to, you know, list off all of my accomplishments with boundaries as I did, but I'm still working on this one. I think it'll be lifelong.
I love it so much, and I am with you. Thank you so much for spending time with us today, you guys. Cathy Adams is the author of Zen Parenting. Go out and get it. You can go to zenparentingradio.com. All the info that you need will be in the show notes, and we will see you on the next episode.